Emily. Interesting comments and reflections on both papers, which we'll turn to now. If we can get you and Krysia. Do you want to start with questions, Damian, or would you like me to?
I'll just check through.
I am here. I'm just trying to turn my camera on.
There's quite a lot of comments on 2 talks. So people saying they felt very touched by the craft work, and comments around being an autistic academic. This was resonating with many in attendance, I think. And so a comment here is, someone who's also experienced my worldview being questioned in my research, your work along with others such as Botha, etc., give me my confidence to continue to execute my autistic integrity in my academic pursuits. And there's a few similar comments to that. Yeah, echoes my own experience as an openly autistic researcher.
There was a question in the chat, Damian.
I was just going to say there's a similarity in the talks about how the autistic worldview is discredited. So that might be a point you want to pick up. But Krysia, was there a question you wanted to respond to?
Yes, so Naomi asked, how do you continue to navigate the trauma of epistemological invalidation in the academy? Do you do ongoing creative work? And I think the ongoing creative work is not something I did before I started my PhD. I can't even tie a Scooby. It took me many years to be able to tie a shoelace. I didn't learn my left and right till I was about 11. So I think a lot of the creative stuff is still quite new to me, even though I'm quite open. But I guess one thing I have found that's really useful is spaces like this, which are effectively communities of practice where you can just be without having to meet other expectations or norms, and not having the fear of violating them. And I think having those communities is so important. So I guess that's the one thing that I do, that Susie does, and that I guess other ones among us would do as well, just to basically reiterate the importance of community when it's right.
There was a question, Krysia, just are you planning on some kind of exhibition of the artifacts when they're finished?
That's a good question. We haven't got that far yet. We are presenting this at another conference in January. That's an autoethnography conference. I will need to talk with Susie, because I know Susie's got other craft bits, other pieces, sewing parts she's done as part of her PhD. So I'd say watch this space. Because I don't want to say yes when she's not here.
No, that would be me. We've signed you up to lots of things, Susie, in your absence. Comments, Emily. Firstly, are you able to bring up your QR code again, so people could have a look at that? And a question, I think maybe from Victoria, but can you tell us a little bit about your current research as well that you're doing in France? Yeah, sorry, I know asking you too many things at once.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Sorry, for some reason my Teams is glitchy. I can absolutely bring up the QR code, but I'll just answer this question first. So yeah, thank you so much for asking. As I mentioned, I'm a second-year PhD student. I am looking at the intersection of autism and labor or work in France. France was a deliberate choice because, as many of you know, France kind of has a not great reputation for autism. They've been sued on several occasions by the European Council because they have a very deeply rooted psychoanalytic tradition which situates autism as a mental illness rather than a developmental condition. And so there's a lot of efforts to cure autistic people through some potentially harmful interventions. And so it's very much in the sort of nascent phases right now, but I did field work this summer at an apprenticeship scheme that uses the TEACH model or structured teaching for youth who have, they have an autism diagnosis and they also have a comorbid intellectual disability or co-occurring. So that's kind of where I'm at right now, looking at a lot of as Krysia sort of alluded to, or Susie alluded to, the sort of capitalist features which sort of situate labor as something that autistic people have to participate in as normatively in order to feel fulfilled. So yeah, that's sort of the idea behind it. I wish I could tell you more, but it's a ongoing project for sure.
Well, they are, aren't they? Ongoing and evolving. One question, checking all the time. We're still okay, aren't we? Yeah. One question about the paper, Emily.
Yes.
Often autistic people portrayed as aliens, not of this world, and unfortunately that makes people treat them as less human somehow. This is a question from Helen, and Helen says, I've noticed that some autistic people say they need to feel grounded by walking barefoot in a natural setting such as a wood. And do you have any thoughts on this?
I have also, I need to stop clicking things because I ruin it when I click things. I've also heard this. I've also witnessed this. For a long time I worked at a summer camp for autistic people, and kids in particular had very sort of soothing reactions. I mean, of course, it depends on the person, but there were a handful of kids who felt very grounded by their experience sort of existing in nature. I think that that's a very interesting thread to pull, and I would love to see someone. I mean, I'm an outdoor enthusiast myself, so I would love to put that in my back pocket for something to look into. But I don't have any things super deep to say on it at this time.
It's useful as a back pocket, though, isn't it? And I think, Krysia, you may be able to see you may have two screens, but there's a comment come through from Naomi about you relating to forms of creativity, but loving the idea of creative non-normative communities of practice. And I think particularly in an academic environment, to be challenging the normative conventions of academia.
Was that a question to me?
Well, it was a comment really, that they loved it and can relate to the creativity leading to vital community. So a comment and a reflection.
Yeah.
we see any others, Damian? Have I missed anything? Don't think we have.
Don't think so. I was just thinking myself, there was interesting connections between the talks today and how the dismissal of autistic ways of being and sociality, and the reverse of that in Elise's talk around autistic and what's benefits is that just acceptance of autistic thisness and so on. So it's just the stark illustration between autistic safe spaces and non-safe spaces and representations, and it's kind of a clear thread throughout all the talks in a way today. So really interesting start to the day. There's some more comments just coming through. Isn't the act of walking barefoot seeking proprioceptive feedback? In many ways, yes. And Krysia's replying to that. Someone commenting on yoga being a great way to feel grounded. Space where NTs tend to come into the ASD world. This is something I've found interesting over the years, is how people talk of returning to their inner child, being mindful, and it's like trying to be more autistic-like whilst trying to push autistic people to be more non-autistic. And it's kind of an acceptance of diversity would be a bit more welcome, I think, where we can all be okay in ourselves in a sense and not be pushed in different directions. But it's interesting how non-autistic people seem to gain benefits from kind of autistic space or autistic like qualities and activities and so on. It's interesting to see what non-autistic people benefit from that. I remember a non-autistic researcher once coming to the Autscape conference, and at the end of the day they spent there, I asked them what did anything really strike them, and they said how calm it was. That was to me quite an interesting response.
There's a really nice comment that's just come through from Lisa, which I think connects Elise's paper with the discussions around, being barefoot, or and it's my experience of my own autistic son's positive experience in a forest school setting. It goes back to freedom of space, movement and creativity that the environment affords. Again, mentioned in certainly earlier talks around, thisness and just being, space to wander, to explore, to be himself, less expectation from a social perspective, less physical and social boundaries. I think that is a really nice way of linking the papers, Lisa. Yeah. So we're just coming up to 11:15. So we've done very well. Thank you so much, Krysia and Emily, for bringing us in, even though I know we started a tiny little bit late for you. So thank you for all of our presentations so far this morning. So many connections, so much to think about, and as one of the comments that I saw earlier, said, it's just so affirming to be in a largely autistic space, listening to autistic presenters sharing their experiences and their research. Yeah, and it's very validating. So quick comfort break for 15 minutes. We'll start again at 11:30. And thank you again, and thank you for our attendees so far for your very generous patience with the technical issues.
Should I share my screen really quick for the
yeah
barcode?
Yeah, that would be brilliant, Emily.
If I can accomplish that.
Yeah, and if not, don't worry. One of the things we were going to ask is if people are happy to share their presence, the PowerPoint slides, then we can circulate those as well. So if you're not able to do it now, don't worry.
Maybe.
There it is.
And that should just be a Google Doc that leads to my references.
Okay, brilliant. Hopefully everyone kind of see that.
I was just thinking, I'm not sure we have a holding slide for the break, so you could just leave that up for the break whilst we have our conference.
Oh, yes, yeah, that would be. Oh, actually, I do have a holding slide. Yeah. Well, how organised was I?
We'll leave this up first so people can.
Yeah, and then.
Screenshot.
I'm just gonna copy and paste my email here onto the same slide.